Okay. So welcome guys, very good morning, and we are going to go through the daily questions for mission CISSP. So we have today 10 questions and we will be trying to see the answers for them. Question number one is an access control model in which the access permissions are governed by administrator and system policies rather than end user is called. So the correct answer for this question is mandatory access control. Little bit about the mandatory access control. So mandatory access control are the kind of controls, is a kind of model wherein the the entire, what you can say, permission on a particular file, uh, with whom the file can be shared or the folder can be shared or cannot be shared, is governed by the system policies, right? And these policies are set by the system admin. So the user is having minimal kind of privilege here in this particular case. So these kind of systems are called as mandatory access control, and you will not see them so prominently. These are more available for the military organization where confidentiality is the bigger aspect. So very rarely you will find. One good example is SE Linux is one of the examples for that. Let us also see some more options which are given in the question. One is the discretionary access control. So discretionary access control means we give the control to the user, and it is based on his own discretion that he want to share a particular file with a particular person, right? So he can give the read access, write access, and execute access, right? And he can also make somebody as the owner of a particular file. So that is what is called as the discretionary access control, but not applicable for this question because here the policies are being governed by the administrator and system policies. Then comes a rule-based access control. So rule-based access control are more prominent in areas like firewall and Avecto and all those kind of tools. They make use of some rules. So these rules are predefined by the administrator. The mechanism will only permit or allow that particular action based on the uh, permission which is granted as per the rule. And then comes the role-based access control. So role-based access control are the controls wherein we do not go on in each and every user to grant them a specific set of privileges, rather than to make things more easy, to make things more easy for the management. What we do, we create some kind of roles. These roles may be based on the kind of work a person is doing, or it may be as per the designation, or like different kind of rules can be there. And then we define these set of privileges for these particular rules. So we do not have to go on each and every user to give them some privileges or something like that. Instead, once the role is created, we are just going to add or remove the user from those roles, and it is as simple as that. So hopefully that might have given you some insight into this question. Question number two, federated identity management make use of authentication and authorization tokens which travels between unrelated domains. Which of the following format is used for these tokens? So we, in this particular scenario, we are talking about the single sign-on. And the single sign-on, when it is limited inside an enterprise, generally we call it as SSO. And the same thing when it goes out of a particular domain, some kind of trust relationship, it is established to a different unrelated kind of domain, then it is generally called as federated identity management, because that is a kind of federation which is happening, right? And all these in this, the authentication sorry, and the authentication and the authorization token, they have to travel from one domain to the another domain. So how does it happen? It happens through SAML 2.0, right? SAML 1.0 was the previous version, which is now not being used. So SAML 2.0 is what you need to remember, right? And it's the extended format of XML, right? So XML normally is a open source language based on some assertions or tags. That is how it works upon. And it can also helps to take care of all that authentication and authorization data can be transmitted because of this. And now you will be wondering, like, because you might have already seen how a XML files looks like. So if that way, if the file is getting transmitted, then somebody in the middle can capture that, and he can just see all that username and password, right? So that's not the case actually. So these XML tokens, which are like authentication token or authorization token, they also have some kind of infrastructure like digital certificates, and encryption is also being used, right? So that is a little bit about SAML 2.0. So SAML 1.0 does not apply. This is an older version of SAML not being used now. XML 3.0, there is nothing like XML 3.0. We have XML as a specific file format. We do not have XML 3.0. And Kerberos et al. Is kind of distractor in this particular question, because Kerberos is a protocol, is an authentication protocol, right? Is not used for the medium of transfer of tokens. Then next is a biometric device is set to lower sensitivity level. As a result, few invalid users are authorized by the system. Which of the below term best describe the situation? So these kind of questions you can expect in your exam. So in this, what we have tried to say, the backend concept is that the biometric devices are configurable. The sensitivity level of a particular biometric device can be changed. And as we change the sensitivity level, there is some impact happening on the performance of the device. So as and when we reduce the sensitivity level, that means the users which are not actually the valid user, they're also getting what do you say, they are also getting authorized, right? And that's a very dangerous situation, because in biometric there are two kind of errors which happens. One is type 1, which is also called as false acceptance rate, sorry, false rejection rate, that is type 1. And second one is type 2, which is called as false rejection rate. So in false acceptance means somebody who is not a valid entity is getting accepted, is getting authorized. And false rejection means anybody who is already a valid user, he is being denied of access. So these are the two types of error. In this particular question, we are looking for when the sensitivity level is reduced and where invalid users are authorized. That means false acceptance. We are looking for false acceptance. So in all these options, we are not able to see false acceptance rate, but we are able to see type 2 error. So this is where you need to be very specific. Different people, they use different terms for the same, so you should be knowing all these terms, and that is why the type 2 is the correct answer. Then next question is, a crossover error rate or equal error rate is optional sensitivity, is optimal sensitivity level where the type 1 error equals type 2 error for a biometric device. Raman is a bit confused while purchasing a biometric device for his company, who needs a higher level of security. There are two devices with CR level 2 and 5, which value below is the indication of the higher accuracy, right? So generally the biometric device, all the biometric device, they have an optimal setting, and that optimal setting is being used by all the vendors to compare the devices and to certify these devices, all right? So this is the optimal setting of the sensitivity level, wherein the false acceptance rate is equal to the false rejection rate. So that is the point where both the graphs they meet. So that is what we call as CER, right? And this same CER you can find in some book is it's as equal error rate as well, right? So we need to be very specific. We need to understand that the terms are different, but the meaning is the same, right? So generally, the lower the CR value, the more the accuracy of that particular device. Okay, so in this case, it is clearly the winner here, EER2, that is equal error rate rating of 2. We can also call it as CER2, right? Both the things means the same, so don't get confused. Next question is, what is the basic features provided by Radius server? So Radius server are kind of remote authentication third-party servers. Because why? Because at all we use Radius servers, because no enterprise would like to just give me a small pause. So as we talk, the Radius servers are the remote authentication server, and why they are being used? Because we do not want our Active Directory to be internet facing, obviously, because that contains a lot of information in there, which is very much critical for the business to function. Also, all these email IDs and the person details and all which are there in the Active Directory, they also are the personal identifiable information. So we should not be, as a security professional, we should be understanding it that we do not make our Active Directory internet facing. But at the same time, we need people who are connecting from home or in some kind of remote login kind of scenario. We need to authenticate those users, right? So how can we do that? We do it through Radius server. So generally, a user connects through the authentication server, which is an intermediary kind of thing, and these authentication servers then in turn take those requests from the user and they reach out to the Radius server for authentication. Now these Radius server can take they can authenticate based on some database or based on some file which is locally stored on the Radius server. They can also authenticate based on some database locally or remotely connecting with that database, and also it can be integrated with your Active Directory by itself, right? So the basic idea of putting a Radius server is authentication. The device should be able to authenticate. It should also be able to authorize the which particular person has what level of privileges, what should be the dashboard which should be presented to him. And then finally comes accounting. Accounting means there will be a lot of logging which will be happening, there will be a lot of auditing which will be happening, and when we are able to track a particular log, that activity is called as accounting. So the triple A is clearly the winner here in this particular case, right? Then going on to the next question, a system admin sets the biometric device to a higher sensitivity level to enhance security. What kind of errors are more probable to happen due to this change? So it's again the same thing which we explained earlier as well. The biometric device, they are adjustable in terms of sensitivity level. We talked about in the previous question when the sensitivity level is decreased, but in this particular question, now we are increasing the sensitivity level. So when we increase the sensitivity level, it is highly possible that some valid users, they are denied of access. That means they fail the authentication mechanism. So that kind of thing is called as the false rejection rate, or we also call it as type 1 error. So that is where we need to be more focused. Okay. And please just ignore in this question, the intent was to put it here type 2 error, just not to confuse everyone. So this is a kind of little confusing point. So better we go with the right term here as the option. Okay. Then next question also is based on biometric device. Raman is the security professional in the firm abc.inc. He is to advise the sales team on which biometric device to purchase for company internal use. Please note this is for company internal use. Okay. And what will be the factors Raman will be looking at? So I think we discussed that previously as well. The first option is throughput time. Throughput time is the total time it takes for a person to get authenticated, and very important factor. Why? Because the more time if it takes to authenticate a particular user, that will not be a good idea to put such a authentication system in a place where we have a lot of crowd coming in. So that's not the right option, right? So in this particular case, that definitely applies. The throughput time definitely applies. And then next is the business requirement. So by the business requirement, what we mean to say is, for example, it is your business requirement what level of security you need, right? So that comes under your business requirement. So based on that only you will go and see some biometric devices which are applicable for you. So definitely that is also the right option here. Then is user acceptance, definitely very, very important. The user who are going to use that biometric device, they should be very much comfortable. They should not feel that the biometric device is intrusive to them, and other kind of things. So a lot of factors which impacts the user acceptance, right? And then comes enrollment time. Enrollment time is the time it takes to create a biometric profile, the time taken by the biometric device to create a profile, the initially when the user is registering with that biometric device. So that is also very much applicable in this question. Next is error incidence. Definitely that is one thing which we will see. This biometric device should not be very much what you can say, error prompt. It should not be like small things should not create some errors like dust, some kind of some oil on the hand, and if somebody is going to press the fingerprint, that should not impact that. And then comes durability. So durability obviously is something which we will look at, because we don't want to change a biometric device in every 6 months, because that costs a lot of money to the company. Definitely we will not like that. And next is the contractual requirement. So I think this is wrongly indicated as right here, because in this question we are putting the control for the company internal use only, right? So here we are not much bothered about the contract requirement, because this particular biometric device we are not putting for a particular project or a kind of client project. So that is what is the wrong option. So everything applies apart from the contractual requirement. Okay. So next question is, Raman is receiving automated alerts from his website for repeated failed login attempts. What is the best countermeasure he should take to enhance website security? So guys, in this particular question, we try to ask you as a, what should be your thinking as a security professional. So first and foremost, I see many people, they just go and click the increase the clipping level. What actually is the clipping level? The clipping level is the value which is set by the administrator. It's a configuration value. For example, if the clipping level is set to 5, that means after 5 attempts, 5 failed login attempts, your system will block your account, kind of thing, right? So that obviously is not going to help in this particular question, right? Because Raman is receiving automated alerts from his website for repeated failed login. That is actually not the problem. We need to focus on the root cause of the problem rather than what notification he is doing. Otherwise, just to remove this notification, he can switch off his mobile or can block all these kind of thing, or block those email domain by itself. So that's not the problem. The problem here is the website, somebody should not be try to put in a kind of brute force attack or things like that, right? So the right answer in this particular case is the multi-factor authentication. It is always advised that you should have the multi-factor authentication. So as the attacker will put in the username and the password, he would be needing a OTP, right? And that OTP will be sent on to the person email or the person mobile with whom that particular account belongs to. Obviously the attacker does not have that account, so he is just trying to spoof that identity, and then the authentication system will never be able, he will never be able to complete it, right? So it's the right solution in such a situation. Okay, so that is what we try to emphasize in this question. One of the options is implement CAPTCHA. Why we implement CAPTCHA? Because CAPTCHA is a different mechanism, which the basic purpose of putting a CAPTCHA in a particular page is to prevent any abuse from the attacker by any automated means. He should not be implementing some kind of a script or kind of remote kind of software which can just fill up everything into the text boxes and click on submit, fill everything, click on submit. That will be a kind, that can also be an attack on a particular application. So to prevent that, we implement CAPTCHA. That is the basic functionality of a CAPTCHA, right? And then time restricting the access to the website is also not the right attitude we should be thinking at. Website should be available, because website has been designed to be available to all the time. It should be available, and even if we reduce the time window for a particular website, even during that time also the attacker can try to launch this kind of attack, right? Then I think this is the second last question in the entire series. Access control list defines which subject can read, write, and execute a particular file or folder. ACLs are part of, and the right option is all. Why? Because all the time we are going to set up some permissions for a particular object. The in the backend there is a metadata which is created, and that remains with the particular object is the access control list. So it is used heavily in all the kind of access controls what we have. So in the backend, that is what is being used. Next is, which kind of social engineering attack is targeted towards a specific employee working on a highly influential position. So this is a perfect example of a social engineering attack, wherein the attacker is trying to make use, or he is trying to exploit the weakness in the human behavior. So generally a social engineering attack, phishing attack, it comes in the form of a email, right? So the spear phishing attack is where the attacker is trying to target a particular person who is working on a higher security level or higher clearance level, that has the capability of making some decisions, or he has a lot of access to the confidential information, right? So that is where the attacker is trying to infer that information from that particular person, right? And then wishing is another kind of attack wherein the attacker make use of phone calls or those kind of things to launch the social engineering attack. Whaling is another form of social engineering, wherein instead of targeting a one particular person, the attacker tries to target a specific group of people through the phishing emails and all those kind of things, right? Then hoaxes is a situation where you get a message, right? Because this bad thing has happened, and this thing, like those messages which you get, which make you to worry, right? And obviously they are not part of the social engineering attack. There are some viruses which create some kind of hoaxes, so that goes in a different bucket altogether, right? So that is the review of the questions. And I hope you might have enjoyed this particular series of questions, and little tricky, because I tried to make it as tricky as possible for you guys. So just to be perfectly matching on what level of difficulty you may find in the exam as well. So only thing is, in the exam, there will be around 50% questions which will be based on some scenario, and 50% of question you can think like that. There is no fine line, but that is what is the normal understanding, my understanding, at least my own opinion, right? Okay, guys, thank you very much for joining this quiz, and